This video has been brought to you by ToroShop.de. They sell some very cool radio-controlled military vehicles and they ship all across the globe. So if you're interested, I'll leave the link to the website in the description down below. And if you decide to buy something, make sure to use the discount code LUCKY2018 for 20 euros off your order. Yo guys, what is going on? Lucky here, and today I bring you the top 5 removed tanks in World of Tanks. I will be ranking these 5 vehicles by using my personal opinion on how much I enjoyed playing these vehicles back in the day, since there isn't really a set ranking for this category. And also guys, please keep in mind that, as I already said, this is based on my personal opinion, so please don't butcher me too much in the comment section for forgetting a vehicle that you would have picked. So now with that all said, without further ado, let's get straight into the list. At number 5, we have the old KV-1S. So all the way back before patch 9.3, the KV-1S used to be the tier 6 Soviet heavy tank in between the KV-1 and the IS. Basically where the KV-85 is standing right now. But what was so special about this vehicle that it makes this list? Well, back in the day, the tier 6 KV-1S used to have the exact same 390 alpha damage gun that the IS had, with some minor accuracy and reload tweaks, therefore making it a very good tier 6 heavy tank, since you could simply shave off half the hit points of any equal tiered opponent in a single hit, which is indeed a little bit overpowered, considering that the other tier 6 heavies like the M6 and the VKH only had a 240 alpha top gun. So Wargaming finally realized that as well, and in patch 9.3 they moved down the KV-1S by 1 tier and replaced its 390 alpha IS gun with the 122mm howitzer, which we are all familiar with today. And they also added the KV-85 to take its place at their 6th position. And yes, I know the KV-85 also has a 122mm IS-like gun, but that gun is considered to be way weaker than the original KV-1S's 122mm, because it has way worse aim stat and way worse reload, to make it somewhat balanced at tier 6. So overall, I still really miss my old KV-1S, especially since it was the first tier 6 heavy I ever owned on World of Tanks, and I just had way too much fun two-shotting equal tier tanks in it. But I also understand Wargaming's decision, since it might as well been a bit too overpowered. So then we move on to the number 4 spot, which goes to the T-18. So probably most of you all recognize this tank nowadays as the tier 3 American artillery, the T-18 HMC. But all the way back before patch 9.12, this tank used to be the tier 2 American tank destroyer, with 50mm thick frontal armor and a very dangerous howitzer gun, capable of nearly one-shotting every lower or equal tier tank. And as you can imagine, if the T-18 got top tier matchmaking, it used to completely obliterate every tank on the battlefield, since most tier 2 tanks don't even have 50mm of premium penetration on their guns, making the T-18 very much frontally invincible, a little bit like the Panzer IIJ. And to top it all off, in contradiction with the Panzer IIJ, the T-18 actually had a very dangerous howitzer gun, capable of one-shotting every equal tiered opponent. So in patch 9.12, Wargaming had quite enough of the T-18's low tier tyranny, so they nerfed its gun and they moved it to the artillery class, where it still sits today as the tier 3 American artillery, the T-18 HMC. And Wargaming also added the much more balanced T-56 GMC to take the T-18's place as the new American tank destroyer. So overall, I'm very glad that Wargaming eventually made this decision, since it really ruined low tier gameplay, since it was pretty much a Panzer IIJ on steroids. But enough about the T-18, now let's quickly move on to the number 3 spot. So now we move on to the number 3 position, and here we have, you guessed it, you either loved it or hated it, it's the oh so infamous Waffenträger auf E100. So how could I possibly make this list without including the legendary so-called Wunderwaffe? So all the way back in April 2013, Wargaming added a second, more paper-skinned German TD line, which is still the same line as you're probably familiar with today, only with one minor difference, or actually minor, let's say major, because if you take a look at the tier 10 position right now in the tech tree, you see the Gorilla 15 obviously, but that wasn't always the case, because when this branch got released, it originally had the Waffenträger of E100 sitting at the tier 10 position. And this thing, when it got released, was massively overpowered. It had the choice of either a 12.8cm or a 15cm gun, with the 12.8 being the overall best option since it had a whopping 6 shell autoloader. And just imagine the Ferdinand's Top Gun, but with a 6-shot autoloader, with insane accuracy and only a 2-second shell delay. Yeah, that is pretty overpowered, because if you multiply 490 average alpha damage by 6, you get 2940 potential clip damage. And if you get slightly lucky with your rolls, you can basically kill the entirety of a mouse in only 10 seconds, which was absolutely insane. So the Wunderwaffe remained in the game with its original stats for a few more patches, until Wargaming finally nerfed it by reducing its accuracy and taking 1 shell away from its clip. But this still wasn't good enough though, so after another few patches, Wargaming finally removed the Wunderwaffe from the game and replaced it with the much more balanced Gorilla 15, as we are all familiar with today. So if you have been around for that long, I wonder what's your experience with the Wunderwaffe. So if you had any, please let me know in the comment section down below. I'm very curious on your opinions about this vehicle as well. But for now, let's quickly move on to the number 2 spot. So at the number 2 spot we have the KV. Yeah, what KV? There are at least 5 of them. Well, this wasn't exactly the case all the way back in the very early days of World of Tanks. Because back then the current KV-1 and KV-2 used to be the same tank, simply called the KV. This basically was the tier 5 KV-1 as we all know it today, but if you mounted the upgraded turret on there, you basically had, as we would call it nowadays, a KV-2. And yes, this also meant that you could mount the 107mm gun on there, that you can nowadays only find on tier 6 Soviet heavies or higher. Yeah, so what's the big deal then? Well, remember that I said the KV was a tier 5 Soviet heavy tank? And yes, you've seen that right, the 107mm ZIS gun is a tier 7 gun that does 300 alpha damage with 167mm of penetration. So yeah, you can imagine that that's pretty OP on a tier 5 tank. I meant, it was already a very great gun on the T150 at tier 6, so just imagine how it would be to fight the KV with the 107mm in, for example, a T1 heavy tank or a Panzer 4H. Yeah, that's indeed pretty unfair. So after a while, Wargaming realized that as well, so in May 2012, in patch 7.3, they split the KV up in the tier 5 KV-1 and the tier 6 KV-2, as we all know them today. So overall, I think it's a great decision, and I also was kind of surprised that the KV couldn't mount the 152mm derp gun, since it had the KV-2 turret. Well, I think it's just for the better, because I don't even want to imagine if you had the 152mm in a tier 5 game. Ugh. Okay, you know what? Let's just quickly move on to the number 1 spot. So now the moment you probably all have been waiting for, the number 1 spot, and my personal favorite remove tank is the T-52. And I think I'm not the only one who absolutely adored this vehicle when it was still in the game. It was basically the perfect light tank on tier 5. It was lightning fast, and I believe it also actually was the fastest tank in the game at that time, with a top speed of 72 kilometers per hour. It also was very maneuverable, sometimes even a bit too maneuverable, which resulted into drifting, but that was exactly why this vehicle was so much fun to play. Because when I used to drive this thing around on the battlefield, I always felt like I was driving in a Fast and Furious movie. It also had a very bouncy hull shape, resulting in quite a few lucky bounces, and it also had a pretty decent gun for its tier. Therefore, it could handle itself quite well even in a tier 10 match, and yes, all the way back in 2013, tier 5 lights could actually face tier 10 tanks, if they got very unlucky with the matchmaking. But sadly, every fairy tale eventually comes to an end, since in July 2013, in patch 8.7, the T-52 got removed from the game and replaced by the MT-25. which I of course was very upset about, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, I can't change Wargaming's decisions, but maybe we'll see it return as a tier 6 premium tank like they did with the Lorraine 40T, and like they're most likely going to do with the Aufklärungs Panzer Panther, which just didn't make this list by the way, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see to find out what Wargaming's plans are with the T-52, if they even have any. So guys, that was basically it for today's top 5. So if you enjoyed the video or found it useful, please consider giving it a like. I would highly appreciate it. Also, if you're new to the channel and you like my videos, then make sure to smash that subscribe button to stay up to date with all my future content. And also, write a comment down below with your top 5 favorite removed tanks. I'm very curious to see your opinions as well. But for now, I'm just going to say have an awesome day, and I'll catch you guys later.